Imagine waking up one day with the unsettling realization that the life you've been living is not truly your own, that every decision you've made, every belief you hold, and even the desires that drive you may not have originated from the deepest part of who you are. This moment of clarity happens to many people at different points in their lives. They suddenly see how their choices, values, and dreams have been shaped by outside forces rather than coming from within. The person they thought they were begins to feel like a stranger. Most people live according to scripts written by others, their parents, teachers, friends, and society. They follow paths laid out for them without questioning if these paths truly match who they are at their core. They chase success as defined by others, seek approval from those around them, and measure their worth through external validation. Carl Jung, the famous psychologist, believed that true life only begins when a person discovers their authentic self. He saw that many people wear masks throughout their lives, never revealing or even knowing their true nature. These masks help them fit in and gain acceptance, but at a great cost, the loss of their genuine identity. From early childhood, people learn which parts of themselves are acceptable and which are not. A child who shows too much emotion might be told to toughen up. A creative dreamer might be pushed toward more practical pursuits. Slowly, these messages sink in, and people begin to hide aspects of themselves that don't match expectations. Over time, they forget these hidden parts exist. The mask becomes so familiar that they mistake it for their real face. They believe they are the roles they play: the dedicated employee, the perfect parent, the helpful friend, without questioning if these roles truly express who they are beneath the surface. This disconnection from the authentic self creates a quiet unrest within. People feel something missing but can't identify what it is. They achieve goals but find the satisfaction doesn't last. They build lives that look successful from the outside but feel hollow from within. The journey to finding oneself begins with recognizing this gap between the life one lives and the life one is meant to live. It requires courage to question everything, not just external pressures but also internal beliefs that may have been absorbed without conscious choice. Jung called this process individuation. Becoming the unique individual one is truly meant to be. It involves facing uncomfortable truths, examining rejected parts of oneself, and integrating them into a whole, authentic identity. The path to self-discovery isn't easy. It means looking beyond the comfortable and familiar. It means questioning assumptions that have guided one's life for years. It means being willing to see oneself clearly, without judgment or denial. Most people never take this journey. They remain trapped in lives that don't truly belong to them, following paths that lead to destinations they never consciously chose. They adapt, they conform, and they suppress their true nature until they no longer recognize it. But what happens when someone decides to break free from these patterns? What lies beneath the carefully constructed identity that has been shaped by years of conditioning and external influence? The answer might be more surprising and more powerful than most people ever imagine. What if the greatest version of yourself is waiting just beneath the surface, hidden behind the mask you've worn for so long? Most people believe they know themselves well. They define their identity through their job, relationships, achievements, and personal history. Yet beneath this surface understanding lies a much deeper reality that few ever explore. Carl Jung discovered that the human mind contains more than just conscious thoughts and memories. He found that beneath awareness exists a vast inner landscape filled with hidden emotions, suppressed desires, and untapped potential. This realm, which Jung called the unconscious, shapes behavior in powerful ways that most people never recognize. According to Jung, everyone develops a persona, a social mask worn to meet the expectations of others. This mask helps people function in society and gain acceptance. A person might present themselves as confident at work, nurturing with family, and carefree with friends. These different faces aren't necessarily false, but they often represent only partial aspects of the whole self. The problem begins when someone identifies too strongly with their persona. They start believing they are only the face they show to the world. The mask, designed as a tool for social interaction, becomes a prison that limits authentic expression. On the opposite side of the persona lies what Jung called the shadow. The shadow contains everything a person has rejected, denied, or suppressed within themselves. These might be qualities considered unacceptable by family or society: anger, selfishness, vulnerability, or even positive traits like creativity or independence that weren't valued in their environment. The shadow doesn't disappear just because it's ignored. Instead, it operates beneath conscious awareness, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in unexpected ways. When someone has a strong, unexplainable reaction to another person, Jung would suggest they might be encountering their own shadow projected outward. For example, someone who denies their own anger might find themselves intensely bothered by angry people. Someone who suppresses their creativity might feel uncomfortable around highly creative individuals. These reactions point to rejected aspects of the self that remain active in the unconscious. The shadow contains not just weaknesses, but also strengths and positive qualities that have been denied. A person raised to be humble might suppress their natural leadership abilities. Someone taught to be logical might deny their intuitive gifts. These hidden strengths represent untapped potential waiting to be reclaimed. Jung believed that psychological growth requires integrating the shadow, rather than continuing to deny it. This means facing the parts of oneself that have been rejected, understanding their origins, and finding healthy ways to express them. This process isn't about eliminating unwanted qualities, but about bringing them into conscious awareness where they can be understood and transformed. When people acknowledge their shadow aspects, these qualities lose their power to control behavior from behind the scenes. The journey of integration isn't easy. It requires courage to look at parts of oneself that might feel uncomfortable or threatening. It means questioning long-held beliefs about who one is and who one should be. It involves facing inner conflicts that have shaped one's life without full awareness. Most people avoid this inner work. They distract themselves with constant activity, entertainment, or social media. They fill their lives with noise to avoid sitting alone with their thoughts. This avoidance provides temporary comfort, but prevents the deeper healing and growth that comes from self-knowledge. Those who do venture inward often discover something surprising. The parts of themselves they feared most often hold the key to their greatest strength and authenticity. The qualities they've been running from might be exactly what they need to live a more fulfilling life. What hidden aspects of yourself might be waiting in the shadows? And what power might you discover if you had the courage to face them? The path to self-discovery requires more than just recognizing the masks one wears. It demands a deeper journey into the unconscious mind where the true self resides. Jung called this process individuation, the gradual integration of all aspects of the personality into a cohesive whole. Most people never embark on this journey. They remain on the surface of their lives, defining themselves through external achievements and social roles. They seek validation from others, rather than looking within for guidance. This approach might bring temporary satisfaction but rarely leads to lasting fulfillment. The journey inward begins with awareness. When someone starts paying attention to their thoughts, emotions, and reactions without judgment, they begin to notice patterns. They see how certain situations trigger strong responses. They recognize recurring themes in their relationships and life choices. These patterns offer clues to what lies beneath conscious awareness. Dreams provide another powerful gateway to the unconscious. Jung considered dreams not as random brain activity, but as meaningful messages from the deeper self. In dreams, the unconscious communicates through symbols and metaphors, revealing truths that the conscious mind might not be ready to face directly. For example, repeatedly dreaming about being unprepared for an important test might reflect deeper feelings of inadequacy or imposter syndrome. Dreams of being chased could point to aspects of life someone is avoiding. By paying attention to these night messages, a person gains insight into their hidden fears, desires, and unresolved conflicts. Emotional triggers also serve as doorways to self-discovery. When someone reacts with intensity that seems disproportionate to a situation, this often signals that something deeper has been activated. A minor criticism that provokes intense hurt might connect to childhood experiences of feeling inadequate. Anger that flares unexpectedly might reveal boundaries that need protection. Instead of dismissing these reactions as irrational, the person on the journey inward uses them as invitations to explore what lies beneath. They ask themselves, why does this affect me so strongly? What does this remind me of? What need or fear is being touched here? This exploration requires courage. It means facing painful memories, acknowledging uncomfortable truths, and questioning long-held beliefs about oneself and the world. It involves recognizing how past wounds continue to shape present reactions and choices. Jung believed that healing comes not from erasing these wounds, but from bringing them into conscious awareness where they can be understood and integrated. When someone acknowledges their vulnerability, they no longer need to defend against it unconsciously. When they recognize their anger, they can express it in healthy ways rather than having it leak out sideways. The journey inward also reveals forgotten strengths and positive qualities that have been suppressed. Someone might rediscover their natural creativity after years of focusing only on practical matters. They might reconnect with their capacity for joy that got buried beneath adult responsibilities. These rediscovered aspects bring new vitality and authenticity to life. As integration progresses, the person begins to feel more whole. The gap between their public persona and private self narrows. They make choices based on inner wisdom rather than external pressure. They express themselves more authentically in relationships. They pursue goals aligned with their true nature rather than imposed expectations. This journey never truly ends. The unconscious contains depths that can be explored throughout a lifetime. Each new insight leads to further questions and discoveries. Each integrated aspect reveals new dimensions, waiting to be acknowledged. The rewards of this journey include greater self-acceptance, more authentic relationships, increased creativity, and a deeper sense of meaning and purpose. Instead of living according to others' scripts, the person writes their own story based on who they truly are. What hidden treasures might be waiting in the depths of your unconscious, and how might your life transform if you had the courage to claim them? Beyond personal experiences and individual memories lies another layer of the unconscious that Jung discovered, one that connects all human beings across time and cultures. He called this the collective unconscious, a shared psychological inheritance containing universal patterns he named archetypes. Archetypes are ancient psychological templates that appear in myths, fairy tales, and religions worldwide. They represent fundamental human experiences and roles that have existed throughout history. These powerful inner forces shape how people perceive themselves and interact with the world, often without their awareness. Unlike personal memories, archetypes aren't formed through individual experience. They exist as inherited possibilities for certain types of perception and behavior. They're like psychological instincts that guide human development and understanding. The hero represents the journey toward growth and transformation. This archetype drives people to overcome obstacles, face challenges, and become stronger versions of themselves. When someone feels called to pursue a difficult goal despite fear, the hero archetype is active within them. The shadow, as discussed earlier, contains rejected aspects of the self. It appears in stories as villains, monsters, or antagonists that the hero must confront. In real life, the shadow manifests as qualities people deny in themselves, but often project onto others. The anima represents feminine energy in men, while the animus represents masculine energy in women. These archetypes aren't about gender stereotypes but about psychological balance. The anima connects men to their emotions, intuition, and creativity. The animus helps women develop independence, assertiveness, and logical thinking. When these inner masculine and feminine energies remain unacknowledged, they create internal conflict. A man who rejects his anima might struggle with emotional expression or meaningful relationships. A woman who denies her animus might have difficulty asserting herself or pursuing her ambitions. The wise elder appears as mentors, teachers, and guides in stories within the psyche. This archetype represents inner wisdom and perspective gained through experience. People access this part of themselves when they step back from immediate reactions to consider deeper meanings and longer-term consequences. The child archetype embodies innocence, wonder, and potential. It represents new beginnings and possibilities. Adults who maintain connection with their inner child preserve their capacity for joy, creativity, and openness to experience. These archetypes and many others operate within everyone, influencing thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in powerful ways. They appear in dreams as symbolic figures. They shape attractions and repulsions to certain people. They guide life choices through deep inner promptings that feel meaningful, beyond rational explanation. Understanding these archetypal patterns helps people recognize that many of their strongest impulses and reactions aren't merely personal. They reflect universal human experiences and developmental stages. This knowledge brings perspective and reduces isolation. For example, someone going through a major life transition might recognize they experiencing the death and rebirth archetype, the ending of one phase of life and the beginning of another. This understanding helps them see their struggle as meaningful rather than merely painful. Working consciously with archetypes allows people to channel their energy in positive ways. Instead of being unconsciously driven by these forces, they can engage with them intentionally. They can draw on the hero's courage when facing challenges. They can access the wise elder's perspective when making important decisions. Jung believed that psychological wholeness requires acknowledging and integrating these archetypal energies, rather than being controlled by them unconsciously. When people recognize these patterns within themselves, they gain access to deeper sources of meaning, creativity, and personal power. The journey toward wholeness involves not just healing personal wounds, but also connecting with these universal patterns that link all human beings across time and cultures. Through this connection, people discover they're part of something larger than their individual lives. What ancient archetypal energies might be stirring within you right now, waiting to guide you toward your next stage of growth and transformation? The final and most profound stage of self-discovery involves questioning the very nature of identity itself. Most people spend their lives believing they are a fixed, unchanging self moving through time. They identify strongly with their personal history, personality traits, and the roles they play. This sense of a solid, separate self feels natural and unquestionable. Yet Jung, along with many wisdom traditions, recognized this fixed identity as an illusion, not the ultimate truth of who we are. The self is not a static entity, but a dynamic, evolving process. It is fluid, multidimensional, and far more expansive than most people realize. This understanding challenges the fundamental way people perceive themselves. The I that seems so solid and real is actually a mental construct, a story created by the mind to make sense of experience. This doesn't mean identity isn't useful. It serves important functions in daily life. But mistaking this constructed identity for the whole truth creates unnecessary limitation and suffering. When someone believes they are only their personal history, personality traits, and social roles, they become trapped in a narrow version of themselves. They resist change because it threatens their sense of who they are. They defend against feedback that contradicts their self-image. They avoid experiences that don't fit their established identity. Jung suggested that beneath this limited self-concept lies something much greater, what he called the self with a capital S. This true self isn't confined to personal boundaries or defined by particular characteristics. It represents the totality of the psyche, including both conscious and unconscious aspects, personal and collective dimensions. Connecting with this larger self requires letting go of rigid identification with the smaller self. It means recognizing that one's essence isn't limited to particular traits, achievements, or life stories. It involves seeing identity as a useful tool rather than an absolute truth. This shift in perspective doesn't happen all at once. It emerges gradually through the process of individuation, as someone integrates more aspects of their unconscious into awareness. Each time they acknowledge a previously rejected quality, their sense of self expands. Each time they recognize an archetypal pattern operating within them, they connect with something beyond their personal boundaries. As this process deepens, people begin to experience themselves differently. They feel less defined by particular characteristics and more connected to the flowing process of life itself. They become more comfortable with paradox and contradiction, recognizing they can embody seemingly opposite qualities at different times. This expanded sense of self brings greater freedom. No longer confined to a fixed identity, people can respond more flexibly to life's challenges. They can access different aspects of themselves as needed rather than being limited to familiar patterns. They can grow and change without experiencing this as a threat to who they are. It also brings deeper connection with others. When someone recognizes the constructed nature of their own identity, they see how others are similarly not limited to their apparent personalities or behaviors. This understanding fosters compassion and reduces judgment. The journey toward this expanded self-awareness isn't about abandoning practical identity. People still have names, roles, and unique characteristics, but they hold these more lightly, seeing them as expressions of something larger rather than the full truth of who they are. Jung believed this recognition of the larger self represents the ultimate goal of psychological development. It brings a sense of meaning and purpose that transcends personal achievement or social recognition. It connects people with something timeless and universal within themselves. This journey never truly ends. There are always deeper levels of awareness to explore, more aspects of the unconscious to integrate, and greater dimensions of the self to embody. Each step brings more authenticity, freedom, and wholeness. What might become possible in your life if you could see beyond the limited story of who you think you are and connect with the vast potential of who you truly are?